crown a champion, a champion. This is me, I still on it, 'cause you all wanna be loved. Yeah, you all wanna be loved.
Hey, and welcome back to the Crimson Dynasty. I'm your host, C'Chi, and we have some special guests tonight. I know that, most of you are familiar with them, but I do want to welcome you here. The Crimson Dynasty is essentially the sister show of the Bama Standard, which I know a lot of our viewers are familiar with. But before I get started, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Workspace Solutions. So if your business needs a digital presence or a full-fledged marketing team at an affordable price, be sure to check them out. You can just look them up on Google and contact them directly if you see anything of interest. So as I mentioned, I'm your host tonight. I have our guest, Coach Smook. A lot of you are familiar with him. He drops a lot of jewels and he can get everybody rowdy. We'll probably get rowdy tonight, actually. But we got some good stuff to talk about tonight. And then we also have our former O-lineman, Chris Owens. So I know that a lot of you are familiar with him. He's won a couple rings at Alabama. He just did his thing. He's been with the XFL, the Seattle Sea Dragons. And so we have some hot topics tonight that we really want to jump into. And we're excited to have y'all on. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and also share this so that we can get some more viewers and have everyone engaged in the chat. So don't be shy. Be sure to leave whatever questions or comments that you have in the live chat, and we'll be sure to respond to you. So just starting things off, I want to talk about our game against Chattanooga, right? So we know that they're in a different conference, and it's not like they're just a bad team. Like I mentioned last week, they're second in their conference. And so we knew going in that, we knew that we would most likely win. But the question was, coming off of a win like we did against Kentucky, and also considering LSU, it's just been a lot of smoke, a lot of heat, and you don't want to lose that momentum. And so I think for a lot of the fan base for Alabama, a lot of us were wondering, are we going to lose that steam just going into the game against Chattanooga? And so I do want to just get things started off. We had 3 passing touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns. We saw 3 different quarterbacks, Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson, and Dylan Lonergan. And so I think from that perspective, most of us from a fan perspective, we're happy with what we saw. But I do want to ask, with our guests that we have, how do you feel about our game? So I'll start with you, Chris. What stood out to you in our game against Chattanooga from an offensive perspective and defensive?
Yeah, first off, Bobby, Roll Tide. How you doing? For me, I think it was that we started fast. And I mentioned this to somebody as well, that we had a drive that was like 11 plays, 90 yards, took about 6 minutes. So we were able to get that sustained drive. We weren't just bombing them deep, which we probably could have all game if we wanted to, but being able to mix a couple of things in there, just in case we do have to win ugly in some games down the road, or we have to be in a shootout, because I know Washington, they had a game with USC where they put up 52 points. And so we want to be able to be a quick strike offense when we need to, but also being able to run a 4-minute offense. And for the defense, I think our secondary played really well. For the most part, everybody on defense was locked into their keys. This was a game where you could have easily gotten overconfident knowing that the starting quarterback was hurt at the beginning of the game. So for us to stay on our keys, make sure we're right where we need to be, show some consistency and build some momentum into the Auburn game.
Right. And those are all good points, especially like you mentioned, just leading up to this game this weekend at Auburn. So those are really good points. And moving over to Coach Smook, what stood out to you on both sides of the ball in our game against Chattanooga?
Just the ability to continue to make adjustments. That's one thing. Even though we did have a team where we kind of, they were outmatched with the talent gap. You did see players from Chattanooga team that did give us a few fits. And honestly, 2 or 3 plays out of the whole game, they're, with a more experienced quarterback, they kind of would have made big plays, not necessarily big plays to us, but anytime you're giving up like a 25-yarder or 20, those type of bomb plays or stuff like that, which did present itself a few times during that game. You don't want to be able to give that up. So Kevin's still in that defense, making adjustments offensively, like Chris said, just being able to get a fast start. That was the main thing. I think I called it on the show last night. I don't think this is a game where we can afford, driving 65 yards and kicking a field goal. That's not going to be acceptable. That's not going to give me confidence as a fan or as a football player / analyst or whatever you want to call me now, to know that we have that much of a talent gap and a struggle. But we didn't. We went in and handled business exactly as we should. I gave them points because that's football. They're football players, and like you said, C'Chi, this team, they're in their league's playoffs. They're in their playoffs. I think they play next week. Their first game is next weekend. So, in the playoffs. So, good win. Handle business. Nothing impressive. Nothing to be overexcited about. Definitely was happy to see a lot of players get to play, but good win. We did exactly what we were supposed to do.
I agree with you. I agree with both of you. And the thing that stood out to me, especially in the first half, so the first quarter, Jalen Milroe didn't have any incomplete passes. And I remember the commentator, he mentioned that too. But I also, I noticed how, at least with the play calling from Tommy Rees, he was able to spread it out really well. We saw, Jermaine Burton get a couple touchdowns. I think Malik Benson had one. Robbie Oots had a touchdown. Here's another tight end where, the majority of this season, we've been seeing him kind of line up, next to Kadyn Proctor, wherever we needed, some more help. And so he's been mostly blocking, but that's one thing that I wanted to see is him actually catch the ball, because we know that he's good there. It's just a matter of him getting more reps and getting more passes. So I was happy to see that, looking at our run game, seeing Justice Haynes out there, that's another Mark Ingram. Jam Miller, I'm gonna keep talking about him. That's the guy. He's the guy. I think the sky's the limit for him. You look at, I think that we have some great things to look forward to when it comes to our receivers, even going into next season. But kind of pivoting to our defense, Christian Story. How about Christian Story? I mean, that interception that he had in the second quarter, I mean, that was powerful. And I love to see the way the players kind of, gathered around him. I think that was awesome and, good for him. But I also like to see that Devontae Smith was back, and I think that that's something that we've been kind of waiting to see. We know that he had a foot injury going into the season. And so, we weren't really sure when we would see him. I know Coach Saban mentioned a couple weeks ago that he was at about 80%. And so that was a good sign for the most part. But I think that it's, even better to see him out there. And I think kind of, in a way, warming up a little bit before we get into the playoffs, which I believe we will. So we have a lot to look forward to there. Now, I do want to ask, we saw 3 different quarterbacks play. How do y'all, I know Ty Simpson, I believe it was in the fourth quarter where he got the touchdown, but he dropped the ball too soon. And that, I'm sure that was something that kind of took the gas out of him. And you see that from time to time with other teams. But what do you both think about, what we saw from the quarterbacks, all 3 of them? I'll start with you, Coach Smook.
I want to highlight something, man. It was funny because I went in a group chat with the fellas, and of course, I said it in my Discord, but I was trying to ruffle some feathers, and I was like, "Man, y'all tripping? Ty happy, man. It's okay. It's okay. Trying to downplay it, but I know for a fact that was probably the best thing that could happen to Ty Simpson. He needed to be brought down to show that he still is mistake prone. He still can be criticized. I think Ty Simpson, that incident and how Coach Saban treated him and allowed him to go back out, because y'all know old school Saban, that's you might get pulled. I don't care how good of a drive that was, you might get pulled because it's Chattanooga. You don't do stuff, you don't lose your focus like that. So to see Coach Saban, allow him to go out there and get, I think he had 2 more drives after that scoring drive, and then they handed it over to Dylan Lonergan. That lets me know that not only does Coach Saban see value in this kid, but he understands the value that is put into him, with him having to be in that second, that a QB2 role. And just like Jalen Milroe said in his interview, probably like a week ago, it was like at some points in practice, they may not get as many reps, but whoever is out there is QB1 during practice, and that's how they treat each other as QB1. So when he's off the field, he's not off on the sideline talking, he's standing there, helping guys out. So you can see that is fluent in that quarterback room. And I was just glad we didn't have to see Ty Buckner. I will say that. Rose High.
Yeah, I think that was a good call for sure. And I don't think we've really seen him since South Florida.
Thank you.
So yeah, that says a lot. And Chris, what are your thoughts as far as what you saw from the QB position?
Yeah, I kind of echo the same sentiments, that it's hard as a Bama player to really understand that Coach Saban's going to coach you the same way, whether you're a starter or a backup. And so for Ty, that's learning experience, knowing that when you get in the game, you never know if this is Chattanooga, Auburn, Georgia, or whoever down the road. You're going to have the same expectations that the starters have. And so for him, it's a learning experience. And you can kind of see when he went back out there to hand the ball off on the one, he's kind of like, man, that should have been my touchdown. But overall, I think he played well. I think it was encouraging that he looked comfortable in the offense, even if it was against Chattanooga. Because like you guys said, it was a good team. They're in the playoffs, regardless if it's FBS, FCS. They're football players. They're on scholarship too. And so any little bit of confidence you can get going into the home stretch of the season, it's big for us.
Yep. All good points. And shout out to everyone who's in the chat. Y'all need to light that thing up. Look, light it up. Keep it going. I think I saw GT18, Bobby Sprinkle. Keep it going. One thing too that was a hot topic over the last, and to be honest, going all the way back to South Florida, was Kool-Aid on punt returns, and that was something that we did not want to see. And we saw another example of why in our game against Chattanooga, right? But then lo and behold, we see Caleb Downs get out there. So what did y'all think about that? I mean, do you feel comfortable with Caleb Downs out there? Do you feel like he's the guy that needs to be back there? Starting with you, Chris.
Yeah, I'll keep it short because I think Coach Smook has more opinions on this than me. I'll say the same thing that I've been saying. I love Kool-Aid as a player. He's a tremendous defensive back, corner. And I think we should just leave him where he is. I know Caleb Downs kind of, he's in that same mold. He's a great defensive back. But for Kool-Aid, let him worry about shutting down the number one receiver. Let him cut off a third of the field and, get Caleb back there because he obviously can make a play.
Yeah. What about you, Coach Smook?
Traditionally, your top corner under Coach Saban doesn't usually return punts. It's usually the number 2 guy. Javier Arenas, who was impactful, he was basically our 1B corner, during his time playing at Bama. I even go back to Cyrus Jones. Yes, he made a lot of plays defensively, but he wasn't our 1A corner. He was 1B. He played the weak side. He usually would play the weaker of the best, of the top receivers when you're talking about lining up and playing man. So having Kool-Aid out there, it was fun last year because nobody expected him to do things he did. But now when he made his mark, it seemed like he just never progressed. And even last year, it was never like he did anything amazing. It was just kind of like he made most of unfortunate coverage, in special teams. And this year, he just wasn't there. It just wasn't there. So to see Caleb Downs back there was definitely a relief. And to see the impact immediate impact that it made, just fielding the ball. And I think there are other guys that are capable, but to see us not to have to go to option number 3 and number 4, that's what I'm more excited about. To know that the coaching staff and the evaluation process is really showing up. You see the changes, even on the changes on the O-line, in the secondary, the linebacker rotation, the defensive line rotation. This staff is really doing, they in their bag right now. And I want to say for probably about the past 6 weeks, this staff has really, really been in their bag.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, shout out to the entire staff. Yeah, I agree. I do like to see Caleb back there. I still think there's opportunity for one of the receivers, though. Our receiving core, the wide receivers, I mean, we're stacked and we have a lot of young guys who, they may not be seeing the field right now. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see a guy like Jalen Hill back there from time. I mean, I just think there's opportunity. Maybe definitely Kendrick Law, but I think if they're going to, yeah. And maybe they're trying to play it safe with Kendrick Law if they're planning to have him line up, a little bit more, and catch some passes or two. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see more receivers back there, but I do want to shift a little bit. A lot of the names that we've been throwing out there have been mostly freshmen. And we said at the beginning of this season that, the freshmen, they were going to be the guys to carry us to the championship and ultimately win. And so I want to talk about the impact of the freshmen this year. We talk about like offensive guys such as Kadyn Proctor, Justice Haynes, Jalen Hill, Elijah Pritchett, Olas Eleni, all these guys, Danny Lewis Jr. and Miles McVay, just on the offensive side. And then looking at the defense, still a lot of guys. I mean, Caleb Downs, it goes without saying, Caleb Downs, I think to me, he's probably the best safety, in the nation. Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Alexander, Sean Murphy, Jordan Renaud, and James Smith out of, Montgomery. So I want to know from both of your perspectives, who would you say are the freshmen who are making, a lot of noise? It doesn't discredit anything from the other guys, but, and I do see a comment from Keith. as close as this team is, it would be a shame if they don't make the playoffs. I agree. Look, we've been talking, and we're gonna keep talking about this
Is
because if
that
they
the
leave us,
Keith Holcomb? Like,
Nah, that's not him. That's not him. We've been trying to figure that mystery out for months now. He never claimed it. He came clean from the jump. He was like, nah, that ain't me, bro.
but that makes sense for him to say that, though, right?
Right.
You just never know. No, but I want to know from both of you, whose names stand out to you the most on the offensive side and the defensive side, as far as freshmen who have made, a lot of noise, a lot of impact. Starting with you, Coach Smook.
Kadyn Proctor for me. I believe, to me, he experienced out of all the freshmen the most adversity. Caleb Downs probably had one horrible moment this whole season, and that was against Texas. That was literally the only dark spot in Caleb's young career at Alabama, and he started every game of the year. Same with Kadyn Proctor. Started every game. He's gone through and went through the test. I honestly believe Kadyn Proctor, the bye week, helped Kadyn Proctor so much because he does not. Chris, and I know you evaluate these offensive linemen on a different level. Being that you played the position before, you played the position, but the type of growth that he's had this season to deal with the type of talent that he's had to grow through, that is to me, that is light years ahead of what you're used to seeing. And that kid is pushing All-American status right now. I mean, he's really pushing All-American status. And the last 2 sacks that's been given up on his side that have been credited to him have not been his fault. And that's been 2 sacks since the bye week. So we're 3 games post-bye week? I mean, they're not his fault. Jalen Milroe needs to get out of that pocket when he has those lanes. And they usually happen early in the game when he's trying to still settle in. So I'm giving it to Kadyn Proctor. He's been so impressive this season.
And what about on the defensive side?
Defensively, of course, Caleb Downs, but even seeing guys, and they're not necessarily, he's not a freshman, but I can't wait to allow Jihad Campbell just be the sole guy next to Lawson. He's a young guy on the field as far as playing time, and his first start was this season. So basically a freshman. I think the year in the system did help, but his natural ability is just, I mean, at the linebacker position, you don't find guys that come in and just flow like he does on a yearly basis. And to see that type of talent return to Alabama and for him to get on early, we all know most guys thrive their second year under Saban when they have those type of reps. So next year, I can't wait to see what he does even then.
I agree. What about you, Chris? Who would you name off the top of your head on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, so I would also go Kadyn Proctor, and we've seen this in Coach Saban's system for several years now, where a young guy has to step in early and play tackle, and they grow as the season goes on and as the years go on. We saw that with Jonah Williams, how he started at right tackle, and as the season went on, he grew and got better, moved him over to left, and he played well. The following year, Alex Leatherwood actually had to come in huge for Jonah Williams in the national championship. Evan Neal, he came in as a right guard, and eventually, you moved him out to tackle. And so that growth and development throughout the SEC schedule is really tough for a freshman because you're not only learning the speed of the game as you go, but you're also learning how we want to do things as a team, learning the intent of the play, learning how we want to do things. So, I think that's really big. And on the defensive side, we talk about Caleb all the time, but it can't go understated how much he's asked to do at his position. He's asked to be a run fitter. At times, he's asked to play that free safety roles where you got to roam around the field. We asked him to run punts. We asked him to make plays at the line of scrimmage. So for him to do all those things at such an elite level and be, in my opinion, the best safety in the country right now, that's huge for our defense.
Yep. I would say the same two guys. I mean, to some degree, it's a matter of certain guys having more of an opportunity. I think that Justice Haynes, if he had more time out there, we would definitely see even more from him. But, if I had to name a guy, of course, Kadyn Proctor, and, I think he started the entire season and he did face a lot of adversity. That was a weak spot for us, and I think that he knew that. And the way that he's grown, we talk a lot about Jalen Milroe and the way that he's grown. but I definitely think that it's worth, especially considering, and that's crazy because they're both freshmen, Kadyn Proctor and Caleb Downs, and they've made such a huge impact. So I think that these guys, like I said last week, or even on the post-game show after we played Chattanooga, that, we found our identity, and that's what's been missing the last couple of years. So we have our game against Auburn this weekend. We have Iron Bowl, and this is always an interesting time because, considering the fact that Auburn lost to New Mexico State last week, I don't really think that we need to read too much. You can read into that a little bit, but at the same time, every time we play Auburn, it's like a completely different team. And so we know Auburn is 6-5, right? But on our side, we have some connection there in terms of, our DB coach, Travaris Robinson, he played at Auburn a while back. And even our defensive coordinator, Kevin Steele, he was the defensive coordinator at Auburn just a few years ago, I think 2016 to 2020. So there are some ties there. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of trash talk. I did read, Malachi Moore saying that there was going to be some trash talk leading up to the game. But there are a few things that I wanted to point out. So they're starting quarterback Payton Thorne. This is his first year at Auburn. He played at Michigan State. Now, one thing that stood out to me is, they played New Mexico State last week, and he was sacked 4 times in that game. Like, I don't know if they're online. I'm not going to speculate. Certain things that have stood out to me, even when they played Texas A&M, I think he was sacked 5 times in that game. So, but this week in particular, I saw that Payton is actually questionable for the game this weekend, some type of foot injury that he has. And so we don't really know if he'll play or not, but they do have a backup quarterback, Robbie Ashford, who's actually really good. He had a touchdown against LSU, and he runs really, really well. He had a rushing touchdown against Georgia. So I feel like whether we see Payton or Robbie, I don't know if it's going to matter. I do think that Robbie, he's better on the ground as far as his run game, but I want to get both of your opinions. And just starting out, how much does this game matter? We talk about the playoff committee, talk about Alabama being in position to, make it to the playoffs and then win the national championship. Chris, you played at Alabama, you played, against Auburn. And I know you said last week you don't like their colors, you don't like their stadium. So how much of an importance is this game just in general? And then how important is it as far as leading us to the playoffs?
Yeah, so obviously the easy answer is it's important because it's our next game. We have to win out. That's the easy answer. But there are guys that are from the state of Alabama, unlike myself, that this game means a lot more to. Like, they grew up hating the other side. So for them, it means a lot. And for the value of our team, we don't want to, for lack of a better term, kind of sleepwalk our way through the game and win by 5, 6. We want to try to make it a double-digit game. We want to blow them out. We know the game might be they might have a little energy to start the game, but it's our job to go in there and take all the momentum out that stadium. The worst thing that can happen in that stadium is that you give them hope, despite them being, an inferior team. And I was kind of looking at the stats from last year because Robbie started our game last year. Robbie Ashford started. He didn't play that well. He did have a touchdown, but, he's more of a rusher. He had 121 yards on the ground, but as a passer, he was 11 for 23. And so if he does have to play, it'll kind of be like doing scout team against Jalen Milroe throughout the week. You want to keep him in the box, keep him in the pocket, make him beat you with his arm. And on offense for us, I think it has to be a fast start. I think the faster we get points on the board, the more we make them feel like they're playing behind and make Hugh Freeze in that offense one-dimensional. I think that bodes well for us. So I expect the game to be a little edgy, a little chippy early on in the start, but it's my opinion that we're a far better team than them. We'll end up walking out of there with a double-digit victory.
Yeah, and I think that quick start, that fast start is going to be key. Coach Smook, how do you feel about this game? What's the importance? We understand it, high level, but thinking of the playoffs and being in that top 4, what level of importance would you put on this game, being that it's our last regular season game?
I'm from Alabama. I'm from Phoenix City, Alabama. I'm right next door to Opelika University. I can't stand this team. And like Chris said, I remember when Earl Alexander signed to Alabama, and our neighborhood was just, we were so hyped for him because we were literally outside. He went to that game the year that you know, Saban was late on his recruiting, I believe. But he went to that game as a for his visit. But when he came home, man, we actually reenacted the 2008 Iron Bowl, the 2007 Iron Bowl. And it was crazy, man. Just seeing these guys come through and do what they do when they grew up in the state, it's a different feel to the game. And a lot of players, former players from last year's game and the year before, they were just saying like they would love for us to get back to dominating the state as far as recruiting, because when it came to that game, it was no question how these boys was going to show up. And so this season is the first time in a while that I feel like you know, that they're up for this game. You know, they're not looking at New Mexico State. You know, Malachi, Kool-Aid, Roy Dell's energy at the interviews this week just is something that it don't feel like talk anymore. You know, it feels like business. It feels like business, and I feel like that's what's happening. Of course, the extra emotion being in that stadium, you're gonna want to get, you know, active. You and Chris, I was trying to show the picture, man, because literally this game it means so much to just the state of Alabama in general, regardless of which side wins. It just means a lot to the state of Alabama. And yes, it's important. It's important to get in, like you said, start fast, get that stadium quiet, hush mouth. I think the ticket sales split is still 80-20. I think it's actually jumped down to like 90s, 94-6 or some crazy jump they got going on this year. But it's one of those things, man. You have to come away with this game, whichever side you're on. Because if you don't, I'm gonna be all up in my auntie ear for the next year and a half. My two cousins out of the 300 family members I got, you know, I'm talking about immediate family members. Literally, it's 3 Auburn fans in my family, and I love to give them crap, even the ones that claim they family, and I can't tell because they're Auburn fans. Like, you know, it means that much. This is past the football field, so yeah, it's definitely important, and we definitely need this one just from a that standpoint. You know that.
Yeah.
Can I add on to that real quick? I think the players who aren't from Alabama, especially, we kind of feel that sense of importance. So when I had guys on our team from Alabama, it made me feel like, okay, this is important to them, obviously, because that's our rivals. But I didn't grow up in the state. Mm-hmm. So for me, I didn't want to let them down.
Right.
And so you play a little bit harder. I don't think they're looking at the New Mexico State game and thinking any type of way. Honestly, New Mexico State was a better team than them coming into the game. It's just the name New Mexico State versus Auburn. You think, you know, how did they lose? Well, they were the better team.
Right.
But it's our responsibility as players not from Alabama to make sure that we're supporting those guys, because they're going to play with a lot of emotion. Some of those guys might have, like you said, grown up in the same city, same state. They're probably best friends, might still be best friends, but they're going to have so much emotion. It's our job to help keep everybody even keel and know that we have a task at hand, and that it's more than just rivalries and friendship. This is a business trip.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all business at the end of the day. And I think this is going to be one game in particular where style points will matter. Just like, you know, when we played LSU, they mattered. The style points definitely mattered, but we didn't necessarily see that reflected in the rankings for whatever reason. But, you know, I'm a data person. I'm a numbers person. So I was looking at a few of Auburn's losses and just kind of looking at, you know, what they like to do. We know they like to focus a little bit more on their run game. So their loss against Georgia, Ole Miss, LSU, and of course, New Mexico State. And one thing that I noticed, you know, you kind of look at the point difference. I mean, look at when Georgia went to Auburn. They were tied, I think, at halftime. And even by the end of the third quarter, you know, it was a very close game. And I noticed that in particular in those 4 losses. So when Auburn played Georgia and Ole Miss, they only lost by 7 points. And I was kind of looking at, well, what are the differences? Because then you see LSU just basically blow them out, I think, by 30 points. And what I noticed was that LSU, they had more plays in the air. You know, they had a good amount of, you know, carries on the ground, but they had a lot of plays in the air as well that were successful. They had a lot of passing yards in comparison to Georgia and Ole Miss. Now, New Mexico State, I think that's kind of one of the outliers. They did lose, and they lost by a lot, actually. But I think that's one of those outliers. You can kind of look at it to some degree. Maybe, you know, not as much, because I do think that Auburn was a little more focused on the game this weekend. But just looking at Auburn and, you know, I was kind of looking at how were they able to even come that close to Georgia. I mean, because we knew when they played Georgia that I didn't think that Auburn could beat Georgia. And honestly, I thought Georgia would blow them out. And I noticed that one thing that made Auburn so successful is that they had a lot. I think they had over 40 plays on the ground. Auburn did. And so, I just think that it says a lot about what they tend to focus a little bit more on. They have a couple running backs. I think they have one guy with about 800 rushing yards, Jacques Hunter, and he's their top running back. And, like I mentioned, their backup quarterback, Robbie Ashford, he has over 200 rushing yards himself, so they have a few guys that that can make some plays on the ground. But what I think was interesting was that, you look at their receivers. I believe the highest amount of passing or receptions that they have as far as yards was about 350, receiving yards. So barely nothing. And that says a lot. So I think in terms of that, when it comes to the way, our coaches strategize for this game, I don't necessarily, whether it's, Robbie starting or Payton, I don't really see them making a lot of plays downfield at all. If anything, it'll be those more intermediate plays, but I think it'll be mostly them trying to run the ball on the ground as much as they can, at least. So I definitely think that we have some opportunities. I do see Keith. Thing is, Bama focuses on championship. Auburn, yep. And you know what, Keith? It's always been that way. I feel like every team that we play, regardless of how their season is by the time they play us, we're their national championship. I think Jimbo Fisher said it himself, 2021 when we lost at Texas A&M? He said it himself, his goal, and you see what's happening now. Their goal is just to beat Alabama. And to me, it says a lot about the organization that they have, the structure that they have, so it just is what it is. But we have to go in knowing that, because their goal, even though it doesn't do anything for them, their goal is to knock us off, and we're not having that. So now I did want to kind of look at their defense a little bit. They have some seniority as far as their DBs, but also their defensive line. They had the guy Eugene Asante, and I noticed that they have a lot of transfers. He came in from North Carolina. Jalen McLeod, he came in from Appalachian State, and then Marcus Harris came in from Kansas. So I'm noticing that Auburn is kind of hitting the portal, a bit, kind of recognizing some of the areas that they struggle in. But even their DBs, they're pretty good for the most part. I think their cornerbacks, DJ James, Jalen Simpson, they've been pretty good this year. And then Zion Puckett, he's, as far as the safeties, he's played pretty well. And then, of course, they have another safety that transferred. I just think that, there is some level of seniority on the defensive line and their DBs, but I don't know. I think with Jalen Milroe being as locked in as he is, and the rhythm that he has established with our players, and Tommy Reese with how well he's been, Auburn's defense really being a factor per se. I think they're going to try, but I don't know. So I do want to ask, considering where we are right now, considering the fact that, the playoff committee, they're definitely going to make us work for it. How do you see this game playing out as far as, score predictions? Do you see this being, I know we all, pretty much agree that we're going to have to come out and play fast, score fast. We're going to have to really just shut them out. I'll start with you, Coach Smook. What do you think as far as score predictions?
Score predictions. I've been calling it 55-13 all week. On all my shows. Like, honestly, I really see a defensive turnover. I don't trust either one of their quarterbacks, and their O-line is the reason why. I feel like Robbie Ashford with a decent O-line would be the clear-cut starter for that team. He would have had kind of like a little bit more time to grow in the passing game, because that's where he struggles at. He's so inaccurate. He doesn't go through his progressions well. And I hate that for a kid who has such athletic ability, And yes, he's an Auburn quarterback, but I like watching talented players play. I don't care who they play for. And Robbie Ashford he's a very talented player. He's just not in a position to develop. Now, this is his first year under Hugh Freeze. So maybe we see some if he sticks around after the season. But I've been calling it 55-13, and that's with, 2 or 3 defensive turnovers, not stops, but turnovers. I see either one of the linebackers catching a quick pop in the middle of the field, or a safety coming down and catching one in the middle of the field. I think it's just one of them games where when you don't have a lot of options against a defense like Alabama, the Alabama defense this season, it's not favorable for you. It's just not favorable for you on any level. Because we have options. We have, if Jace McClellan doesn't get going in the run game, we've been rotating guys to see who can get going first. But a game like the last two, where you get guys that go in and they pop off the 6-yard run on their second carry, and then you rotate them, and then the second guy does the same thing on his second carry, drops off a 12, 15-yarder. And then you go in with the third guy, Jam Miller, and he comes out and breaks a 25-yarder, and you go back to the top rotation, and your number one guy's back at, 12, 15, his 6 yards goes. This is one of those games where it's just going to be, pick your poison for Auburn, and they're not going to be able to slow it down. They're going to need as much voodoo as possible because this game is going to get ugly.
Yeah, and then hopefully quickly. So 55-13 is what you're thinking.
Yep, I'm sticking with it.
Okay. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm kind of close to that. I got 45-14. A lot of the same things you said. The voodoo is they might try it. I really don't care about it. I just think we're such a better team. Offensive line wise, we've been leaning on people lately. I feel like with the, inserting Jaden Roberts in the lineup has given us a lot more power in the run game. And like you said, we rotate running backs. Wouldn't be surprised if even someone like Justice Haynes got a few more carries after how he played last weekend. So us leaning on those guys, Jalen Milroe giving the defense fits. He's been really confident throwing the ball. Our receivers have been playing really well. I've even seen Jalen Hale getting on the field more and more every week. And so that's encouraging for our offense, giving us another weapon, somebody else to go out there and make plays. And for our defense, I'm sure Hugh Freeze will have something dialed up, but they're going to try to do the lateral thing with us, sideline to sideline, because up the middle, there won't be anything. I don't know if Deontay Lawson's playing. Do you guys know?
I heard he's suiting up. It's a high probability that he play. I think he's at 85%, 85, 90% is what they're saying. He's been in practice every day this week. He didn't practice every day last week. I think he warmed up before the Chattanooga game. They just decided to sit him, which was smart. But I don't think we're going to have Jalen Key either, which is fine by me with the quarterback, the quarterbacks that we're dealing with, because I think this just helps Story, as far as the injuries. This helps him be in that position, and Smitty will definitely be rotating as that dime safety. So this is a good game for us, man. It's a good game for us to just kind of show out and like C'Chi said earlier, create that talent gap, create that those style points, because now it's not about style points and moving up and ranking. It's just about creating the image that, once we handle Georgia, we clearly have been the only team getting better every week.
Yeah. I think I'll have to go with 49-17. And I say that because if Robbie does get out there, I see him being able to drive them down and at least get them, feel.
Oh, she lagging again.
So don't mind me. Yeah, our weather's been kind of weird down here. All right.
That rain.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot. All right. So those are the predictions. It sounds like we're all within, a pretty good range of each other. So we'll see. I think the key is going to be just getting that fast start. And so hopefully we do. But looking forward to the SEC championship game, which of course is next weekend in Atlanta. This is something that, I didn't have any doubt. I figured we would make it. I don't a thought of us not making it. But I do think that it's interesting that a lot of people are still counting us out. A lot of people are still thinking that, and I don't know why, because even this Georgia, it's not the same Georgia team that they've been, over the last couple of years. So I'm just curious, and we don't have to stay on this topic too long, because we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but I do think it's worth mentioning. How do y'all feel about us going into that SEC championship game? I mean, it seems like the last few years we've been the underdog when we've been so dominant the last decade. We've won so much, but here we are again, being the underdog. Starting with you, Chris, I know that that feeling. How do you feel like us going into, the SEC championship game, regardless of what happens against Auburn? What is being the underdog? What does that do? What type of impact does that have?
Yeah. First off, the best thing about not being a player anymore is that I can look forward. I can look at all the rat poison and not have to worry about Coach Saban getting mad at me. So I'm fine with it. Being the underdog, especially coming off a more than likely emotional Iron Bowl game win, no matter if it's a blowout, close game, no matter what, it's going to be emotional. It gives us something to chase after. I think a lot of times at Bama where we get in trouble with is that we're so used to being out in front and having such a large gap over somebody that we oftentimes forget that we kind of have to maintain the top of the mountain. People are chasing after us, and for us, we're not at the top anymore. We're kind of like the hunters. So I think it's going to be good for us. I know Georgia, they're riding on the whole thing where that Brock Bowers and Lam McConkey, they've only been on the field together for maybe a game total combined healthy. So, but for us, I think we're so confident in what we're doing that nothing that they can do is going to be something that, for one, we haven't seen. We know the system. We know what they run. It's our system. And two, playing with confidence, no matter who the opponent is on the other side, that's a big thing. So I'm very confident. I know it'll be a close game. It'll be a hard-fought game. But the way we win that game is going to kind of dictate how the committee looks at us, because in the eyes of some people, we don't really control our own destiny. So for us, we want to make it as convincing as possible and leave no doubt that we're the best team in the country.
Well, you said it all. I mean, Coach Smook, you got anything to add to that?
I'm right there with you, Chris. I think this game can really, honestly, how we don't ask me now as far as what we can do against Georgia. Talk to me after this Auburn game, because I'm convinced. Like, looking at film, looking at how we've been playing past 6 weeks, like I said, we should not go in and struggle against Auburn environment, any of that. We've seen hostile. We've had two of the most hostile environments earlier in the season. And in those hostile environments, this team was put to the test, mainly offensively. Could we pass against A&M? Went out there and did it, 300+ yards passing. Could we go into Mississippi State and deal with the noise? I think we only had 3 penalties that game, and 2 of them were on offense. Two of them were on defense. The one that was on offense was kind of a self-imposed penalty type thing where we kind of just took the penalty. So battle-tested, resilient. This team carries those titles very, very strongly. They carry them proudly. So going against Georgia probably intensifies them. But talk to me after the Auburn game, because I want to see how much this rivalry means to this team. How much, but not just the rivalry, but understanding where's their psychological side of them that's challenging themselves, outside of what Coach Saban and that staff are doing. And I think they're there, Chris, honestly, as C'Chi, she gets straight and come back in. But yeah. I think this team is there's so much talent on that roster. I think Justin brought up the point a few shows ago. This is the highest rated team fielded on the field at every position, but 2, there's a 5-star, in your first group. So it's crazy to have that type of talent, and that's with Trey Amos and I think Trey Amos and Key and Milroe are your non-5 stars. Everybody else is a 5-star that was on the starting lineup, starting the season. So the talent is there, the development, we've been seeing it. I'm just curious to see how they approach this game, because if they come in this game and we hit a big one to start like we did against Chattanooga, Chris, I'm gonna be on the post game show crying, emotional tears, because I know what's going to be happening in Georgia. If we can go into Auburn, if we can go into Jordan Hare and really pull off a big win, bro, I'm scared for Georgia, because Georgia has flaws. I seen Missouri really test Georgia. Missouri just don't have near of an offensive line caliber as we got, and that's where they struggled at. You saw Auburn be able to run the ball on Georgia, and I don't use transitive property, but the committee clearly does, So yeah, talk to me after that Auburn game.
And the big thing about that too is that people forget that SEC championship is, even though we run Mercedes-Benz, that feels like a road game. Every time I've been there, it feels like we're the underdogs. We're the road team. We've never had the sound advantage. We've always had to go on like a different cadence or pay closer attention to the cadence. So essentially, we're getting ready for another road game by playing arguably our biggest road game of the season.
All right.
Yep, that's true. That is true. Yeah, I know when we played, I think it was the SEC championship just a couple years ago, and Bryce just went in, balled out. We had Georgia fans leaving the stadium. I mean,
It was empty.
yeah. So it just says a lot. So yeah, you saw that. I mean, it was quiet as a lamb on the other side. We like, what's going on? Y'all had all that, all that to say, but like we said, we gotta, go 1-0 each weekend, keep our focus on Auburn. And I mean, forgetting about the loss against New Mexico State, that to me, that didn't mean anything. A lot of people, they were just kind of eating it up, but it's like every team that we play, it doesn't matter who it is, we're their national championship. I heard some people, this week say that our game against Georgia that's gonna be the national championship. So, we'll see. We'll see. But I do want to kind of look at some of the matchups this weekend. I think that there are certain ones that really could put us in a good position, as far as, from a playoff perspective. Starting with this Friday, we have Texas playing Texas Tech. We don't know how that's going to go. And then you also have Oregon State playing at Oregon. So I'm not sure, I'm hoping and praying that one of those teams lose Friday. I think that's what we're going to need, Michigan and Ohio State. I mean, there are a few games, but for both of you, what are the key games this weekend that you're kind of keeping your eyes on?
Go ahead, Chris, because if I get started on this, I'm going to go. So take some points away from me so I could be in it.
I'm going to try. I think I've said this a couple of times. Me and my mom probably spend an hour and a half a day talking about this. And in my opinion, I know Texas Tech beat Texas last year. So there's always that opportunity. Now, Quinn Ewers didn't play in that game. But, there's always that opportunity. Texas Tech comes in with some confidence. I think for us, we should be paying more attention to Oregon, because if Oregon happened to win out, our resume, our strength of schedule, all that stuff, I think we surpass Oregon in everything. And so we may not get as much help from Texas. Who knows? It's college football. Anything could happen. Their schedule's a little weaker. But when you've got Oregon playing Oregon State, who played Washington really tough last week, and then having the Pac-12 championship against Washington, if they end up slipping up a little bit, that can create some openings for us. Obviously, us beating Georgia helps. Michigan and Ohio State work itself out. And then Florida State, we have to see how the impact of their quarterback loss is going to be on that team. I'm not one to jump to the assumption that they're going to be worse, because I've been a part of teams with backup quarterbacks step in and play well. We've seen teams in the past do that as well. But I'm really more focused on the Oregon side of things. I want to see how they do, because I feel like we stack up well with them. And they don't have that head-to-head advantage over us, that trump card, so to say.
Right. Interesting. Coach Smook, what do you think?
I'm just going down the list. Ohio State, Michigan, they handle themselves. Washington, and their matchup this weekend. I'm curious to see. Wait, are they in the bye this week? Oregon and Oregon State.
Do they play Wazoo? Does Washington State play?
Yeah, Washington State. That's the game I highlighted 3 weeks ago. I didn't know if it was. Man, it's going to be a game. Like, people sleep on that game every year. And Washington State, not that they do Washington like Auburn does Alabama, but those years when Washington is trending upward and Washington State has dropped a few early ones and people have kind of not been paying attention to them late in the season, they know how to make headlines. And this team, they are capable. But I don't see it happening this year. Michael Penix is a dude, man. That offense is unbelievable. And they won't see a legit defense that can really test them or really stop a phase of their offense. So if Washington doesn't get disruptive in that passing game, this can be a bad game for Washington. But I'm focused on the Oregon game, and they play on a Friday night. It's one of those weird days, post Thanksgiving. Can Oregon State, rally after a pretty bad start to their game last week? They didn't look like the Oregon State that was trending upward, before their game last week. They kind of looked off, I think DJ got banged up a little bit and had to miss a drive, or something happened. It wasn't normal, like their normal showing. So I'm going to be paying attention to that game a lot. Pulling the schedule back up. I'm sorry, y'all. I keep clicking back. Y'all know Florida State, like you said, the loss of that quarterback of Jordan Travis is going to be huge. If this was week 7, Chris and C'Chi, if this was week 7 and they lose Jordan Travis, I give them I give them a chance to kind of just handle business on the way out. But they have Florida and they have Louisville to finish the season. They're playing Louisville in that conference championship. If they lose to Florida, which is capable of just turning it on, we don't know what Florida team is going to show up. It's been 11 different Florida teams show up every game this year. So I don't know which Florida team is going to show up, but if the Florida team that played a tough game against was it Utah at the beginning of the year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, they came out and they looked solid with no chemistry. If they could come out and put up a solid 2.5, 3 quarters and frustrate that second string quarterback and that offense, they don't allow them to get big plays downfield or cheap underneath extended plays, big explosive plays from underneath. Florida's going to beat Florida State, and that'll be one domino out the way, and everything else plays itself out.
Agreed. I think Florida State and Oregon, and maybe Texas. I think Texas could catch them L this weekend. I'm hoping. I hate to say it like that, but I'm kind of hoping I just want the chips to fall where they need to for Alabama. So, as we
did last year for sure.
Yeah,
Overtime game they lost.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that there's still hope. And we do really hope that Georgia stays at number 1. I think they just play, Georgia Tech this weekend. It's a night game. They play at Georgia Tech. So, Georgia Tech, they were okay this season. They were a little better than they have been this entire season, really. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I think, we go in, focus on our game against Auburn, blow them out, do what we need to do, and, just kind of see what happens. I'm curious to see if the committee kind of, what are they going to really look at? Because if some of these teams, say, for instance, Texas and Texas Tech, if Texas happens to come out with the W, but they only win by maybe 1 or 2 points, what is that going to really do? Because it seems like the committee kind of picks and chooses when certain things matter versus when it doesn't. Yeah. But as we conclude the show, I do want to mention that we have a new show with our own George Teague and JT. They have Teague's Take that comes on about 8:15 Central time. So it'll come on right after this on the Bama Standard. So be sure to check that out. But before we leave, do you all have any socials that you want to share or anything that's coming up, any shows?
Had to put my CarMax on. Because this weekend, man, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be lit. And I'm going to be doing a lot of yelling. I'm going to be doing a lot of heavy breathing from yelling. So, I don't want my lips to get too chapped. So I'm pre-moisturizing my lips. But y'all, you already know. Y'all can find me at Coach Smook on every platform. But Friday for the live game preview simulation, we have some former players that are coming on as guests. Like I said, I was going to get one for sure, and I was able to lock it in today. We got Daquan Menzie coming on. He's going to be on the defensive side. Going to be interviewing him, asking some questions about his experience. Me and him, we go back, but I've never got to talk to him about his Iron Bowl experience. He's only played in one, undefeated. He won that one the year they won the national championship. So just want to get his. I was watching the Iron Bowl for some clips of him, but I think he only had like 3 tackles that game. But his highlight of the season was against Mississippi State. He just went crazy. He went crazy against Mississippi State, and he had a pick 6 against Arkansas that year too. So be there for Daquan. And we working on Marquise Mays. So Bama Nation. If you don't follow me on Twitter yet, go follow me on Twitter. I'm going to be doing another clip of Marquise Mays. I'm going to make a little highlight. I'm going to try to recruit him in. We're going to try to pull him in, put some candy out there and, give him some attention so we can get him on here. I want to get him. Because that post today, man, he got me fired up, all over again watching Marquise Mays on Twitter. So definitely pull up on that. And post game show, of course, y'all know everything. Coach Smook on everything. And one last thing, man, before we get up out of here, in the words of my guy Marquise Mays and Mr. Updike, man, them trees. You know what I'm saying?
I knew that was coming. I was just waiting for it. I thought you were going to do it when my internet connection was messing up. That would have been hilarious. I'm going to go back and watch it and see if you did. Chris, any socials that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, right now I'm just on Twitter, X at BG Chris Owens. I hate Auburn. I don't know what else to say. I can't stand them. I feel like I'm from Alabama. I really can't stand them. So I don't have anything else really to say. It just they kind of make me mad.
They do.
They make me mad.
Yeah, they're pretty gross.
And why do they have an eagle? I don't.
It's
What
a
does War
buzzard.
Eagle mean?
It's not even an eagle. It's really a buzzard. They put this paint on it every weekend to kind of give it like that white part of the head. But yeah, that's definitely a buzzard. I've seen that buzzard a couple times driving down 80. I'm pretty sure. So yeah.
Yeah, I hate
Well,
them.
we do have our post-game show right after our Auburn game. So make sure you tune in. We go live as soon as the game ends. You'll see myself and Chris on there, as well as Justin Riley and a few others. So it's going to be a good show. We keep it real when we have these post-game. Even on this show, we keep it real. But definitely the post-game show, you get those raw emotions. You know, we had Stephen M. Smith a couple weeks ago talking about crock pot Bama, you know, so that's going to go down in history because that's just literally still ringing in most people's ears. So we're definitely excited about that. You can find me on Instagram at beauty_of_intelligence. And without further ado, y'all, look, we're gonna go into Auburn with those raggedy colors, and we're gonna win. We're not just gonna win, we're gonna win convincingly. We're gonna move up in the rankings, but we gotta believe, because if any team should be in the top 4, Alabama should be in the top 4, regardless of that one loss to Texas. Because if we really want to have that discussion, we can literally line up every team that's ranked ahead of us and talk about the Georgia and UAB game. You know, we can talk about a few. If we really want to have that discussion, we really can. You know, so you can't just weigh a so-called loss, but then not look at the poor wins, you know. So it's a lot that really needs to be considered, but, you know, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So I definitely want to thank everyone who joined tonight. We what?
Put the guns up, sis. Put the strap up. Put the strap up. It's okay. It ain't Saturday yet. Put the strap up. We don't need it yet.
Man, nah, it's up. It's up. You know, I keep it nearby. I ain't lying. I keep it nearby. Keep one of them at least. Nah, look, we really appreciate we appreciate everyone joining. Thank you for joining, and we really appreciate you engaging in the live chat. Be sure to come back and watch the replay. Like I said, we have a hot post-game show, so be sure to check out the Bama Standard right when the game ends, right at 0. Be sure to come on. We're going to be on. We're going to be running our mouths, and who knows who else? We may have somebody else on. You never know. So thanks for joining, and roll tide, roll, and happy Thanksgiving.
Roll Tide.
Happy
Roll
Thanksgiving.
Tide.